So the purpose of this video is to help you write a CER. So this is not a real CER, but it's designed to help you write the claim and evidence section. Now, let's say, for example, you had to write a CER about a 100-meter dash. Maybe this is even for a different class, like a PE class. We're just going to walk you through the steps. So typically you'll have either a purpose or a focus question. So in this case, we have the purpose is to determine who is the fastest runner in your class. You make an initial claim. So for example, maybe you think Mariella is the fastest runner in her class. So you make an initial claim, and then you're going to write some background. Now the background is assuming you haven't collected any data. It's information that will help your reader understand a little bit more about the topic. So for example, I look up at my title, the 100-meter dash. Maybe I need to explain what a 100-meter dash is. Sometimes the purpose will also give you some guidance as well. So I'm kind of looking at these two places to help maybe define some terms in my own words and maybe give a little bit more context to the actual question. For example, in this case, I wrote background. Running is a sport that is often part of physical education classes. There are several timed events such as the 100-meter dash and relay races. Speed, or the distance traveled in a specific amount of time, is calculated using the formula speed equals distance over time. So just giving a little bit of background. Then you're going to have a data section. So sometimes you'll go straight in the evidence, but sometimes you'll have data. This is uncalculated data. It's what you actually observed. So in this case, all of the girls had 2 different trials. And so you're looking at the data and it's recorded. You always make sure you have your units going on. And then below the data section, if you have to do any calculations, you would do calculations there. And it's really good, a good idea, especially when you have multiple calculations, to give information about which each calculation is for. So I can see this first one's Mariella's fastest speed. So I looked at the table and I used her fastest speed. And so basically I'm using the formula. So type the formula in, plug in the values. I mean, it's okay if you use the calculator, but I need to see what went into the calculator. For those of you that are unfamiliar with using equation editors, basically, let's say I was going here, I would go up to, let's see, Insert, Equation Editor, and then I've got this section up here. The fractions are here, so I'd be looking here and I could write distance, and then I put my little cursor in the bottom, over time, and then kind of do an equal sign, and then I go back up and I say new equation, A over B, and I kind of continue with that. Don't forget to also include units in your things. So I've got my calculations, but just looking at this data, so I'm going to go down to I've got my calculations for all 3 girls. Those were the people I thought was the fastest in the class. You might have more evidence or less depending on. Now the evidence is really where you're going to try to make sense of the data. So I review my data, revise the claim if the claim doesn't support, if the data doesn't support the claim. So I look at the 3 girls and I can see up here, out of all of these trials, that Beata ended up being the fastest. Mariella's fast, but she's not the fast. She doesn't have the fastest time. So I have to actually go back up to my claim and I'm going to revise it. So you're going to go in and you're going to basically go to Format, Text, and I'm going to strike through that my original claim was incorrect. And then I'm going to add in, so I have to actually undo that. So Format, Text, I have to unstrike it, otherwise it's going to continue to write with the strike through mark. And then I'm going to put in purple, so text color purple. I'm now going to put the name that's actually the correct. So once again, this is kind of these developing ideas where we're deleting out things that are incorrect. You could actually make it brown if you really were awesome about it. So I'm crossing out what's not correct in brown, adding in the revision in purple. and then I'm going to go down. So I'm corrected my claim. What else does it say in the evidence section? Give the supporting data. Make sure if you have a comparison. So it's one thing to say, oh, Beata's the fastest. She ran, the 100 meters in 16 seconds, or traveling an average of 6.3 meters per second. That's one thing to say that, but it doesn't really prove anything unless you actually have information about the other runners. Then I can see for myself, oh yeah, her speed is faster. She did it in a faster time, and she's covering more distance in a second than the other runners. So once again, if you're going to be making a comparison, saying someone's faster, someone's slower, this was the best, whatever best means, then you need to have two numbers. Then you need to actually make sense of the data. So you're going to explain why Beata's time was the fastest. And then you need to connect back to the claim. So here's just kind of a rough idea of what you might do. Beata's speed was 6.3 meters per second. The next fastest runner, so once again, I'm making a comparison to another person in her class. The next fastest runner in her class was Mariella, who had her best time at 5.9 meters per second. Beata traveled, oopsie, I had some sentence issues here. Beata traveled 0.5 meters per second faster. Therefore, the claim that Beata is the fastest runner in her class is correct. So then you can see I looped back. I made sense of it. I gave the numbers, but then I actually kind of made sense of it, going, Beata's time is faster, 0.4 meters per second faster. So I have to kind of make sense of the data, then kind of tie it back into that the claim is actually correct, my revised claim in this case. And then with the reason section, which I'm not going to go into, we always brainstorm some vocabulary words. So then I would see those in the reason section highlighted. You might use them also in the background section, but I want them for now highlighted in the reason section. Okay, hope that's helpful. And here also just really briefly with the reason section, you would explain why is Beata faster? So what might be some of the reasons that her speed is faster? She runs on a traveling team, and I mean she's part of the track and field team, so she's practicing all the time. Maybe she has really long legs. I don't know, whatever. You're going to come up with some explanation that you think is plausible. You might not always have it correct, but we want to see the evidence backing up and proving your point, helping to prove your point, and coming up with good science vocabulary that helps to explain your thinking. Okay, hope that's helpful.